Hey, what's up, guys? Thanks for tuning back in to Think Big. Today on Muscle Minds with Scott STEVENSON, we are going to dig into the science of bodybuilding, as we always do. Well, pretty much Scott is, and I'm just going to tag along and ask some questions along the way. Today, we're going to start out talking about understanding estrogen and AIs. After that, we have a listener from Patreon that wants to discuss building denser muscle without creating more muscle volume. Then lipotropic compounds and injectable vitamins. Another Patreon guy asks, should we limit carbs post-intense cardio to improve mitochondrial biogenesis? Then we talk about good old-fashioned high Deca with flow test. Guys, all this and a bunch more. Listen, if you enjoy our content, then do me a favor, hit the like button, leave us a comment, and if you haven't subscribed, we've got a bunch of different bodybuilding podcasts, all entertainment, education, everything in between, coming out each week. So hit the subscribe button, hit the bell. There's a lot more coming from us. Let's get to the show. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Muscle Minds with Scott STEVENSON. I'm Scott McNally. All of our programming is brought to you by TrueNutrition.com. You can use our code THINK for some additional savings. If you're from Canada, you can also shop with supplementsource.ca. And regardless of where you're at, you can go to byobbcoach.com to get the best book in the world, the be-all, end-all, one-stop shop to take care of your off-season, your contest prep, and more. Get it signed by Scott himself.
Don't get me in trouble, dude. I'm not offering that service. But this is a one-way ticket to the Mr. Olympia stage, literally.
Yeah.
Buy this, and you'll be on the Olympia stage.
Brandon Curry said so himself. He did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He did say that that it was one of his top books, or maybe his foremost recommendation.
Yeah, he didn't technically say it was. He didn't actually say it's a one-way ticket to the Olympia stage, but that's pretty much what he meant. That's pretty much what he meant.
I think he said he would still be like wallowing in the lower ranks of the local shows were it not for my book. And look at him now, you know.
So
it made that much of a difference.
As I had said to Scott on text yesterday, Scott, you have been summoned by the people of Patreon. We've summoned the power of Scott STEVENSON. We had a couple of questions, but before we hit the button, I was talking to you. You were explaining some cool stuff about estrogen, and I was like, oh man, I want to just like bottle that up and bring it to the podcast, because I felt like, man, this is stuff that people would really enjoy hearing. And some of it kind of stemmed from just random conversation relating to, you know, I've heard other people say that there's kind of been this renaissance use of letrozole. And then it got us talking about like how fast does estrogen clear? Because we all know, you know, if you were to have an estrogen problem, you can start popping your 8X, popping your Letros, popping your Aromatase, your Aromasins, and that doesn't mean that the estrogen that's in your body is going to be touched. Basically, I can't remember who said it, but I love this analogy. An AI is like closing the gate to the parking structure. So you can't let more cars in. If there's already cars in the parking structure, then Nolvadex would be the equivalent of like putting a cone in front of each space so that the cars can't park. And eventually, you know, those cars filter out and leave. But I wanted to ask you, how long does it take that estrogen that's in your body, if your estrogen was high, you try to get under control using an AI, that estrogen that's floating around, how long is that left?
So, yeah, I was just sort of giving my best guess based on the most sort of well understood and function of estrogen, is that's, you know, in being one of the two hormones that's involved with the menstrual cycle that varies on a monthly basis with women. So yeah, I love that analogy. Before I go on to answering the direct question, I like that analogy because it's important to know aromatase is actually sort of a complex. There's like several steps in the aromatization process. And there are numerous ways that you can inhibit that with an aromatase inhibitor. competitive, non-competitive binding, and suicide inhibition, all those sorts of things. You can go into how the different AIs work, and those AIs have different half-lives. Like a suicide inhibitor would bind to the enzyme and stays there. It's just there. And that enzyme is then inactivated. So literally, it's kind of like if the enzyme is blocking the pathway into the parking garage, right, and the parking spots where the estrogen would go, you've got some aromatase inhibitors that are just going to stay there, and you're going to have to keep on replenishing that by continuing to take the aromatase inhibitor. But others, depending on their half-life, so how fast they're cleared from the system, are going to be around for longer or shorter period of time, but also how they act on the enzyme. It may be that some of those, once you've got, they're gone from the system, there's no more inhibition. But others, if it's a suicide inhibitor, it binds and stays there. And then that enzyme's gone. It's knocked out. That's literally you just completely destroyed that entryway to the parking garage, pretty much. So the actions of the aromatase inhibitors in terms of how long they act are going to be a function of blood levels as well as the mechanism of inhibition. And then the parking garages, or sort of the cones in the way of the parking, there's two different parking spots. You kind of got the VIP, and then you've got the regular, or valet maybe, or the regular. There's two different estrogen receptors. At least there's two classical genomic estrogen receptors.
Okay.
So we talked a little bit about this in terms of the androgen receptor. I kind of chimed in on one of Dave's podcasts with you on a Monday or an early morning, and talking about the androgen receptor. There's actually androgen receptors there's only one that I know of that has various forms. That's the classical one that binds as a dimer, then that combination with the androgen goes into the nucleus and then activates all the androgen receptor sensitive elements, and you have all sorts of things happen in terms of genetic expression, protein synthesis, and all that good stuff that we want, all the androgenic responses. Well, you've got actually two estrogen receptors, an alpha and a beta, that act in that way, plus estrogen receptors that are on the membrane. And there may be several of those from what I've seen, because they can look at different ways that you can inhibit the second messenger systems. And there's different second messenger systems that are involved with estrogen signaling. So that tells you there's different membrane, so on the surface of the cell, and then there's those estrogen receptors, the classic ones that are the long-acting, that are inside the cell. There's an alpha and there's a beta. And the alpha tends to have a lot of the positive benefits of being anti-inflammatory. It has a free radical quenching activity that's associated with it when you bind to that alpha receptor, the alpha estrogen receptor, not the alpha receptor, not talking about beta receptors here, or adrenal receptors here. So the estrogen receptor alpha subtype is kind of the good benefits of estrogen, and for just health wise. But the beta form is the one that's actually been associated with anti-catabolic effects and anabolic effects. So, and the distribution, like muscle has both. Kind of the most important thing. Muscle has both alpha and beta. So when you look at SERMs like Clomid or Novodex or Teremethine or Raloxifene, those have differential binding effects on the different estrogen receptors.
Okay.
And you can look all those up. There's a table, I think, in Wikipedia that's nice. I think I saw once.
Huh.
Yeah. So you can have some, like Raloxifene is like an alpha. It's a partial alpha receptor agonist, but it's an antagonist to the estrogen receptor beta isoform. So that's an example where if someone, for instance, and this is where this is a whole other little avenue of variability in bodybuilders, is estrogen is anabolic. You see this, like the thing that people point to the most is when you look at like cattle implants in the agricultural science world, they'll put like the standard cattle pellet would be like trenbolone, good old tren, with estradiol, with one of the three estrogens.
Okay.
And that creates a better anabolic effect. It's anabolic in terms of fat to some degree, but you get better yield in terms of how much you feed the animals and how much muscle you get out of them. And they look at marbling and all that kind of stuff. And there's probably some nuances there that I'm not aware of. But so you've got that estrogen receptor beta, and to what extent that estrogen is going to be anabolic is, as far as I can tell from the limited data I've seen, a lot of this is in rats. And I haven't looked at this directly, and I didn't come today prepared to talk about this.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I'm off the top of my head.
I like it. I can just like throw a random sciencey question at you, and you can just go. That's what this is great about this.
Just look what the fuck's you got in there. See what it's kind of like. You might get a tin can. You might get just like some barbed wire you pulled out of the bottom of the pond, or it could be a fish. Not a fish you'd want to eat necessarily. But
what's that fishing called with the magnet fishing? Is that it?
I don't know.
Magnet fishing.
Just see what you pull out of the bottom of the lake.
Welcome back to Magnet Fishing with Scott Stevenson.
There you go. Magnet information fishing. So, but that's a possible variability, a source of variation. For instance, is if someone uses a SERM to block estrogen effects, the extent to which that SERM blocks the alpha versus the beta receptor, and the extent to which they're sensitive to the extent to which it binds in them, or the post-receptor mechanisms are going to vary. Not to mention the estrogen receptor that's on the surface of the cell, which is kind of a completely unknown territory. Like that's for a whole nother season of Star Trek right there, because there's unexplored territory there.
Okay.
They don't know what's going on with that. So at least that I haven't found that like it's really been ironed out. So anyway, that's kind of like what's going on with aromatase inhibitors in terms of how fast, the extent to which they inhibit aromatase. About most of the estrogen in men comes from aromatization. So it's from testosterone that's been converted, or most of the estrogenic actions, if someone's on gear, let's say, is going to come from aromatase. If you're just talking about no gear involved, about 25% of the estrogen that is in the bloodstream is produced directly by the testes.
Okay.
So, and there's also estriol and estrone. I believe, if I'm recalling correctly, like on a concentration basis, estriol is it estrone or estriol? One of the two is, I think estriol is higher in amount, in concentration, than the other two estrogens. It just doesn't have as high of an activity.
Okay.
But that's another thing. So there's a complex metabolism there of where, like, I think DHEA and estradiol can both go to estrone.
Huh.
If I recall, like someone can find the metabolic pathways. That's one of those things. I'll just look that up if I need it. But it's a very complex scenario. So someone could take like DHEA as part of an HRT protocol, which sometimes folks will, and just for health, and it has an antioxidant effect in of itself.
Yeah. And
some of that might be mediated through estrogen production. So you can end up with an estrogen spike from taking DHEA.
I've heard of that before. I haven't seen it, but I've heard of it.
Yeah. So it's a really complicated scenario, but the thing to get at the question was that if you look at what happens during the menstrual cycle.
Okay. Yeah.
And we got the background of all these different receptors, receptor subtypes, surface receptors, intracellular genomic receptors. In the menstrual cycle, you've got about a week when you're getting a spike in estrogen. Progesterone's involved there too. Ovulation, we're talking about a normal menstruating woman. And then if there's no implantation, there's no pregnancy, then those two progesterone and estrogen levels will fall back down in about a week.
Okay.
And so that gives you kind of like the time scale through which estrogen is controlling things on a very basic physiological level. The menstruation process, what happens, and this is what we were talking about before, afterwards, if a woman has gotten pregnant, there's been ovulation, there's been successful fertilization, and you get implantation. So the fertilized egg, or the egg gets to the endometrium and implants there and starts to undergo meiosis or mitosis in this case. Then you get a growing fetus, and that's where HCG comes from. It's an embryo before it's called a fetus. So that's where HCG comes from. So that takes over. HCG basically is the same thing as luteinizing hormone. And that stimulates ovarian estrogen production and keeps that high, which helps maintain the uterine lining so you don't have menses. There's no sloughing of that endometrium because there's a growing baby there. Or we use the wrong terminology, but it's a growing embryo and then becomes a fetus at 8 weeks, I believe.
Yeah.
So like that's like if that doesn't happen like within a couple of days after ovulation, it's like kind of that window, just on average, and you don't get an elevation in estrogen, then you're going to have menses that's going to happen. Estrogen levels drop back down, and then 10 days later or what have you, in the second half, you've got what would be the follicular stage, the luteal stage. You're going to have menses. So everything's happening with estrogen in terms of the spike coming up and down, and a whole lot of events during that period of ovulation and potential pregnancy in a matter of a week. So you take that idea. That's my kind of like my framework of the timeline through which estrogen exerts its actions. And if we apply that then to men, and they've got all the same pieces involved in terms of enzymes of conversion and receptors and what have you, if you drop estrogen levels down, let's say you just decide to take taking letrozole like the Tic Tacs, and you drop your estrogen levels down to the bucket, the estrogen actions that are gonna drop very, very rapidly thereafter, probably in a matter of days.
Okay.
It's a long-acting hormone, and that it's a steroid hormone. It acts in those genomic ways, but you're going to feel the effects of that lickety split.
Okay.
And this happens like a common complaint. A lot of people probably heard Fuad talking about this when he was kind of prepping this last time. I think when he didn't actually compete, and he dropped his estrogen low. I think he was taking aromatase inhibitors, and like he immediately felt like shit. He literally could tell the effects. Some of that cognitively could have been through those cellular plasma membrane receptors, but the joint pain and the various things. Some of that can be aromatase inhibitor related potentially. I mean, there's some effects on liver and the lipid there, but I think a lot of the joint pain can be just from not having those anti-inflammatory actions.
No kidding.
And estrogen, like that's one of the things. It's free radical quenching ability and anti-inflammatory activity is involved with why women have a lower risk of cardiovascular disease.
No kidding. Okay.
The disease of inflammation.
Yeah. Huh. Okay.
The vascular endothelium. So that's so you can feel that on a time scale that's pretty rapid. So it's not like you've got estrogen that's going to be acting for like a month or something like that, because the whole menstrual cycle is over the course of a month.
I see.
And it's steering like menses and ovulation in that time frame. So I would say it's definitely shorter than a month. We're talking more like a week, or I would say days, where you're seeing substantial differences in physiological function when estrogen levels have been just ablated. You can just knock them out with letrozole.
Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm going to take a brief moment to shout out our sponsors. I'll make it quick, but this stuff's super important because it's our sponsors that help to make this show possible. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be here. And if it wasn't for you shopping with our sponsors, we wouldn't be here either. You can support our programming by shopping with TrueNutrition.com. They're our title sponsor. They've supported us for a number of years. They have awesome health and performance supplements. You can ask Skip or Dusty or Scott Stevenson all about True Nutrition, and they'll tell you how good of a company they are. Hardcore bodybuilders have trusted them for over 15 years now. Use our code THINK. You'll get some savings. You'll support our programming. If you're in Canada, you can shop with supplementsource.ca. They have highly discounted supplements, discounts on bulk orders, and free shipping over $99. Check them out. And finally, you can directly support our programming on Patreon. I'll have links below for Patreon and everything else. We're taking more questions over there, and I appreciate everybody who's already helping to directly support our programming through our Patreon. All right, guys, thanks for hanging with me. Let's get back to the show.
All right, listen, like I said, You have been summoned, Scott. We summoned Scott Stevenson for some questions. I think we have one in the live feed too. If you guys want to post anything up in the live feed, feel free. By the way, if you are watching this on YouTube, then do us a favor, hit the like button if you enjoy our content. Leave us comments. All that stuff helps to boost us up in the algorithm. And by the way, you guys are killing it with our comments, so you are much appreciated. This comes to us from Nick over on Patreon. Shout out to you. So he says, how can you train to make muscle denser, heavier, or train to make muscle look larger? Hold on a second, because I think that first part is a little confusing. He says, how can you add muscle without gaining size? Like keep chest, arms, legs the same number of inches. And the reverse, how can you gain size but no weight, so that you look bigger? Is this even possible? And why does Nick want to know? That's, if he was like a wrestler, I could see where like you would want to be stronger, but you denser muscle's going to weigh more. I don't know. Would it?
Yeah, you would want the other way around, so you can be like these freakazoid, pros that are in classic that look like they weigh 240 and they're like making the
Terrence
185
Ruffin
weight class.
Yeah.
All those guys, like all those dudes.
Yeah.
Last year I did a Pro-Am and they had classic back there, and it's like, I don't know, let's say I was 210 or something like that. I'm not sure what I weighed in at.
Yeah.
And I'm standing next to guys my same height who were supposedly like 185. and they look like they're 30 pounds heavier than me. And I wasn't in horrible shape.
Yeah. No.
It's just like, what's
hollow,
going on?
Hollow bird bones.
Something. No, there's not. So what he would be getting at is, like you said, basically changing the density of the muscle.
Yeah.
When you load up, this is where people talk about sarcoplasmic hypertrophy and myofibrillar hypertrophy.
Which was which was a great podcast we did previously. I learned what that is.
Yeah.
You can too.
Right. Yeah. So the evidence for the sarcoplasmic, the most direct stuff came from the Cody Hahn study that people talked about many times. I blabbed on about it before too. They took those people who showed hypertrophy in a study that on average the training regime was a very high volume one, like a reps and reserve style training regime, and they didn't show on average muscle growth, but there was about a half, I think it was actually exactly one half of the subjects showed some muscle growth, and in those they demonstrated an increase in the sarcoplasmic component, so to speak. So the density, this is just stuff I remember off the top of my head, the density of biological protein is assumed to be 1.34. The density of water is 1 gram per milliliter, gram per cubic centimeter. Protein in of itself is 1.34. Muscle tissue is 1.06. Like, these are the assumed values that are part of the body composition literature. So muscle is a little more denser than water. Fat has a density of 0.9. So like if you take 1 being the density of water, 1.06 being like your presumed density of muscle, and you add, like, fill it to the brim with glycogen. Mm-hmm. And you assume, which is not a great assumption necessarily, that you get about 3 grams of water for every gram of glycogen. That can vary too. So you add a bunch of glycogen. I don't know what the density of glycogen is, but let's assume that adding glycogen and all that water means you're adding a lot of water, which has a density less than the density of muscle otherwise. You're adding a bunch of less dense stuff, the water, and you're going to volumize, and you're going to make less dense muscle. So that would be one way through which you could have sarcoplasmic, quote-unquote, hypertrophy and increase the relative volume of the muscle that's made up of less dense stuff, water being the less dense than everything else. Yeah. So that's one way. Just go from a flat muscle that's glycogen depleted to a fully loaded muscle. And that's going to be less dense. It's not going to be, like, you're not going to, like, you fill up. That's the whole point of carb loading, is to be fuller and rounder. And, but you're also gaining weight too. And it's not like you're taking it's like people say it looks like you injected air into the muscle, like it just like all of a sudden just, air having like, basically zero density, relatively speaking. Doesn't obviously, but you're just going from a density of 1.06 to like, let's assume it's just pure water to 1. Okay. That's not like, it's not like you're mixing like lead and styrofoam.
Yeah.
Something really low in density and something really high in density, and like now you have some combination of half styrofoam, half lead that's got a density that's right in between, and you substantially reduce the overall density.
It's going to be close. It's
1 and 1.06 are really close. That's that's going to be undiscernible. So you will get the filling effect, then you get the rounding. Yeah. And you see the difference. That's obviously clear. If someone has like a really good glycogen load and they gain like 8-10 pounds and they're just as dry, like a big super heavy competitor. Oh, that's tremendous. Like the visual effect is huge, but it's not going to change the density. It would, you could see that, you could measure that various ways, but it's not going to change. It's not going to be the deal breaker. The things that differentiate those guys that are like the classic physique guys who are like they're still like underweight by 10 pounds and look like they're overweight. And the same thing held for like all the 212 guys. Like, how the hell did that guy make weight? I only know like Flex Lewis was, and what's his name? Whose name I always forget. Who won several times before Flex.
Dave Henry?
Dave. No, not Dave. Only won one time.
Okay.
Dave's main competition works at Bev's. Steve Weinberg.
Oh, not Jose.
You'll say it. I always forget his name.
Damn, I'm looking
Kevin.
Right at his. Thank you, Kevin. Yes.
Can't remember his last name right now, but anyway, Kevin was a guy who used to like have to push the weight down, and then he would feel like a motherfucker.
Why can't I remember his name? I'm picturing him. He was like the blackest black man you could be black. Remember?
Yeah, almost too dark to show
exactly.
The muscle definition.
Yeah.
So you've got the phenomenon where those guys look like they're so much bigger. Some of that's just having Flex Wheeler like joints and just round muscle bellies. They're just very balloony, so to speak.
Kevin English,
right? Yeah. So Kevin was someone. I think Flex was someone. Dave, they're at the end. Like Dave. Yeah. Thanks, Aaron. Duh.
Yeah. Right.
Dave competed this year. He won the Masters overall at the Legion Sports Fest.
You're kidding. Congratulations to him. Okay.
Yeah. He ran his own thing. He did his own deal.
Good for him.
But the last, he was getting up he was getting close to the weight class.
Okay.
Limit there, and like last year at the Olympia.
Yeah.
And so, but otherwise, like when Dave won the 202, the very first 202 Mr. Olympia, wasn't anywhere near the limit. There's no problem. It just has everything that it takes to have that physique that can win a Mr. Olympia. And a lot of that is just looking much bigger and more impressive than what the weight would suggest.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about it like, and I think he would admit this, so I'm not like, this is not at all meant to be like a negative, but like Dusty Hanshaw is a fucking ginormous guy in person. He's huge.
Yeah, he's a monster.
And I've seen him. Before he was a pro card, I used to see him at the Arizona shows.
Okay.
I sat next to Dusty at shows, and it's been quite a while now. But I saw him here in Tampa like 3, 4, 5 years ago. Just ran by and said hello at one of the gyms here while he was in town for one of the shows. He's a giant guy. He's just like huge, but he doesn't have that classic like holy crap shape. So he's going to get beat by guys that weigh like 40 pounds less than him.
Yeah.
Who are in just everything else being the same, how in shape they are. He just doesn't have that shape. The muscle
I bet
bellies,
that like his femur weighs as much as like the bone of an elephant femur. Probably has like the same density, the same overall mass.
It's probably exactly the same.
That's why he can do the rows he does and like not feel it. He's fine,
right. That needs to be the quote for this podcast. This will be the blurb that I'll put on Instagram. But he's a guy like he's just like and it's in person he's just so impressive. But when you get on stage and you're looking at things in the lights, you're looking for the flow and the aesthetics, the symmetry, so to speak.
Yeah.
It's a whole different deal. So on the other side, so back to the question, there's most of the literature is like one study. You can look at, he's talking about making muscle more dense.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, this is just sort of a theoretical question. There's not really, just kind of like it's a reason to talk about shit that doesn't matter, basically.
Yeah,
It's
people
kind of
like asking you questions like that. They do.
Yeah, like, what kind of bullshit will he come up with? So that's one of the like looking at how muscle grows, and how does contractile strength grow? Like if a muscle has been stimulated through progressive overload in the weight room, or some environment whereby it's been provoked to become stronger, does it just get bigger? It can become stronger and be able to accommodate whatever the stimulus is, whatever the stresses placed upon it are, by becoming larger, get a bigger motor, by becoming more efficient with fuel or more capable of using fuel. So you increase the concentration of the enzymes of energy metabolism, or shift their relative concentration so it becomes more endurance oriented. Or you can also you can change the motor out, basically, grade the motor down into a more, actually, it's sort of like changing the gears in a way, by changing the myosin composition. So you have type 1, type 2A, type 2X myosin in humans. Mainly, like, there's some other stray forms you find, like in the jaw muscle and that kind of stuff, but those are the main ones in skeletal muscle. But it's not just one, it's not just 3 years. There actually is there's a blend. So if you could pull out a fiber, you would actually see a blend of those different types of myosin all kind of throughout the muscle and the myofibrils, which is really pretty cool. You think it might be disruptive to producing force, but it gives sort of a continuum of relative speed of contraction, and relative efficiency of contraction if you're measuring work. So type 1 is going to give you a lot more force relative to the ATP, but it's going to give you a lower rate of ATP use. So you can't like contract really fast or very powerfully with a type 1 myosin, but you can have good endurance, and you can maintain in a more efficient manner force production with that. So you can change the myosin composition, you can change the enzymes, or you can change the size. And one of the things that was thought, way back in the day was like, well, maybe if you're looking at like the cross section of the muscle and you see all the little, I always think of it as like a spaghetti can that you've got dry spaghetti in. If you pull out one of those spaghetti strands, that would be a myofibril. And if you look at that really close, you would see the little Z lines in there between the sarcomeres.
Yeah. So
along the length of a myofibril, and then you would see the actin and the myosin. And the myosin that's in there could be variable, depending on, if the muscle's been going from inactive to more active, or from one kind of activity to another. So you can get fiber type shifts in that way, and it happens in humans too. It takes a little while, but it will happen. So the question was, if we look at the spaghetti can, and those spaghetti strands are spaced, so there's a packing density to those, like how close are they to one another?
Yeah.
And the question was, do you see a change in packing density when muscles grow? And except for the case where you've got like massive inflammation because you've got an injury that the muscle is trying to recover from, and it's just swollen and inflamed, so there's fluid within it. That would be a form of sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, so to speak.
Yeah, I guess
the cell's
so.
now larger, but a very, very acute one. It's not, if it's just inflammation, that will recede. But you can't. There's a couple studies, but this is not the typical thing, showing a change in packing density, and showing a lessening of that. But that's not the overall picture that the stuff that I've seen in any of the models of muscle growth, the stretch overload or the compensatory hypertrophy or resistance training or anything else. It's pretty much, it stays the same because it's a very, it's a very intricate lattice, and that would interrupt all sorts of aspects of the way in which the myofibrils are sliding against one another, and movement of things like creatine. There's a creatine phosphate shuttle, so creatine phosphate has to slide back, it has to move, diffuse back and forth through there to provide creatine, to CPK, to provide ATP. So that would be like switching. Okay, this is not the best analogy, but it's like switching from 2x4s to using 4x4s for your building. And the whole building is like set up with everything with 2x4s in there. Now you go to 4x4s, and it's like, oh shit, we just threw the spacing off of all the walls, and like now we've got like 10 rooms in a row, and now we've got 10 times those 2 extra inches. It's not really 2 inches with the 4x4, but you got to add all that together. It's like, oh fuck, we just screwed up the whole blueprint. Yeah. This is just crazy, So the packing density stays pretty consistent. So you can't change density, make things more dense by increasing packing density, or that doesn't typically happen.
Okay.
From what I recall seeing in the literature when I looked at it.
Okay. And regardless, let's just get bigger, get stronger. I do think he was just asking like for, just a hypothetical type thing. We had one other one here from Ted.
Well, here's one thing like it's more like down to earth, so less like kind of out there in the outer science, outer space. Like someone says he has dense muscle. Yeah. That just means you're leaner and you've got good development. So you've got good lines and delineation between the muscle.
That would be the best way to stay the same size and grow more muscle would be to lose. I mean, it would be to lose body fat, because he was talking about the circumference. He doesn't want the circumference to change. If you were to get leaner, then the circumference will be more likely to shrink. So you have more room to add muscle and stay the same.
Yeah. It's just the muscle density thing is not. Here's the thing. Like people think about, we might as well cover it. Like, so striations.
Yeah.
What you're seeing there is just, they're probably the fascicles of fibers. It's the outer surface of the muscle, and those little bumps that you see as the striations, like across the chest or a lateral thigh or what have you. Those aren't individual muscle fibers. The muscle fibers aren't like I just happen to have. I had sushi last night here at home, chopstick.
Yeah.
So like this is like this would be the size of a muscle bot. There would be like hundreds of fibers across the diameter of this.
Okay.
Muscle fibers are itsy bitsy teensy weensy. You can barely see them with the naked eye if you look really close.
Okay.
And you've got good vision. So this would be like the size of which if you had a bunch of chopsticks lined up, right, and you see the line between the chopsticks, that would be where you might see a striation across the pec or something like that. Well, there's hundreds and hundreds of muscle fibers in there. So what you're seeing in those when you say, I can see the individual fibers, it's like, no, you can't. There's just no way. It would be, they're much, much like a muscle fiber is like 40 microns in diameter, roughly, pi r squared. Yeah. 40, something like that. And a red blood cell is 8 microns.
Okay.
So 5 red blood cells across would be like, the radius. You could like 5-10 red blood cells across the whole diameter of a muscle cell. And that's a really big cell.
Yeah.
And you can't see like your red blood cells. If you could see these, then you when you bled, you could see you'd be like, little tadpoles out of a bucket you pour in. Like, oh, look, I can see my red blood cells. You'd be able to see them right there,
Yeah. You can see bundles of fibers. How about that? You can see bundles of fibers.
Yeah, and it's just the way that some people have the epimysium there is shaped that way, the outer fascia of the muscle, and some people it's not, and that's just and that can get disrupted by injections.
Yeah,
people will lose the striations by doing injections and scar tissue there, but the striations are not a function of actually seeing the muscle fibers. That's a total other. It's a whole quantum. It's a whole scale below.
Okay. Let me see here. I think we have another one here.
You sent me today?
I think so. Thoughts on injectable lipotropic compounds. He says usually a blend of vitamin Bs, L-carnitine, choline? I don't know what that is. Choline, inositol, and methionine. My endo offers Lipo Minnow from Olympia, and Aminoxylum has shredder. I know the B vitamins and L-carnitine are effective. Just wondering about the MIC blend added in. What would dosing frequency be? So what's in question here? Because he's saying he understands the benefits of the L-carnitine and the B vitamins. So things like methionine. I don't know what these benefits would be injectably. Injectably?
So,
is that a word?
As an injectable, yeah, injectably. I like that word. That's a good word.
It's yeah.
You're doing what I do in German. I just make up words. It seems like that should work. So those are, if you look at all of those, like just in general, without going through, what the B vitamins do, they're involved with enzymes. Like vitamins are generally they're essential. We can't make them, and why we need them is because they're generally components of enzymes. And enzymes are, of course, what direct our metabolism. All the reactions of our body are things that would happen in and of themselves, or that would happen with the energy that we use from our food. And the enzymes are catalysts that direct the flow. So like if you take food and let's say you eat a carb source, the glucose gets into your blood, gets into the blood cell, and then it goes into into glycolysis. All the enzymes there that someone would learn about if they took a basic bio class. They'd have to kind of know that when they went into a physiology class. Those enzymes are just catalyzing reactions and so they happen more quickly. And some of them need a little bit of energy. There's a little energy input that goes into glycolysis, but the end all be all is that you end up being able to drive energy from the bonds of those foods. And it's the enzymes that allow that to happen. So when people say, B vitamins give you energy, there's some truth to that, and that the B vitamins are part of enzymes of metabolism. And like L-carnitine is the one we can kind of talk about the most because we covered it before. And I still have that article that's going to come out on John's site. We can have a whole podcast we talk about this.
Cool.
I'm kind of waiting. John's site is still up and running. For anyone who doesn't know or hasn't been there, there's like 12 years of archives. I think I have 12 different articles on that site, and they're all still timely and valid. Like there's one that's it's called All About Muscle, and it covers all sorts of cool muscle physiology and histology, some of the stuff we talked about today.
I joined specifically to get an article. Was it called How to Shred a Bodybuilder? Was that the title of it?
Oh, one of the Peak Week ones.
Yeah. It was it was a 2-part article. I specifically joined to read those. It was great. It was totally worth it.
Yeah. You can join, you can join for a month.
Yeah.
What's it, like $15 or something? $12?
It's not much.
Not very much. And then you can go and you could just say, I'm going to spend all day today just getting stuff. And then you can have them, download them, whatever. John was totally fine with that. And then you can just end your membership. And then you got stuff to read for 6 months or whatever.
I've done that. I've done that at that site. Yeah. I'd been a member for several months and then stopped and then was like, you know what? I wanted to learn some more. So I went back and got a month membership and then just consumed a bunch of stuff and figured out what I needed to and then moved on,
So they're like the team, Chris Edmonds and, all the guys, I think Noah, who was videographer, was there. He's going to stay there. And, I think everyone who still is on the team they're putting stuff out. The videos and everything is still going. So it's kind of
Andrew's
minus John, right? Of course. Yeah, Andrew, of course. Yeah, he's still writing things. He's doing the in the trenches stuff. I think they've got some other things coming from. I don't want to say anyone's name because I'm not for sure it's going to happen, but from some of John's former clients who are sort of carrying on John's energy and using his training programs, that kind of stuff. So
that's cool.
More practical application stuff. Anyway, my article come out. I'm sort of waiting because they haven't quite got the social media chain up and running. Like the train's still kind of so kind of plodding along. Yeah, and just giving it a little bit of time. But the L-carnitine article will come out. So the L-carnitine, for instance, he says he knows L-carnitine is effective. Injectable L-carnitine, if given enough for a long enough period of time, will elevate L-carnitine levels. But as will come out in the article, and as we talked about, and I mentioned a couple other podcasts now too, that has a direct negative impact on thyroid action at the cellular level. So while L-carnitine is involved with bringing in fatty acids from outside to inside the mitochondria, what it does, and if you have higher levels of that L-carnitine acetyltransferase levels, which you can get by taking L-carnitine, orally will do it as well. Injectables a little bit faster probably. You've also got a scenario where while the L-carnitine, at least while that's elevated in your blood, you're going to reduce metabolism. And I finally got, Victoria sent me that article in German from like 1956 where they treated people with hyperthyroidism, with Graves, and they were able to reduce metabolism by like metabolic rate by like 50% with a standard typical dose taken orally, like a couple grams a day.
Holy shit.
So it has a massive, potentially negative impact on slowing your metabolism. So let's say, those numbers won't necessarily pan out because that was a hyperthyroid situation, not euthyroid, but let's say someone decides that they're going to just sort of try to load carnitine at, 5 grams a day. Yeah. So they put a gram in each of their 5 meals. So they're constantly elevated, and they do that, say 20 hours out of the day, like they spread it throughout their meals. And they got a few hours maybe in the wee hours of the morning where there's no L-carnitine having this effect. And let's say in doing that, I'm just like ballparking numbers. This is coming from the ballpark ideas that come from that study that Victoria's able to get for me. Let's say they drop the metabolism, let's say 25%. And there's someone who's a pretty big person, their basal metabolic rate is 2,000 calories a day. It's 25%, which is, as far as I can tell, pretty possible, is going to be about 500 calories that they've reduced their energy expenditure. They're using more fat, but now they're using 500 calories less a day. That's your whole caloric deficit right there.
Yeah,
just shot in the foot. So that's a potential negative effect of the L-carnitine. Inositol there's some nice effects. Go to examine.com and you can look some of these things up. Methionine is, it's a sulfur-containing amino acid, so it's very unique, and because there's lots of enzymatic reactions that are uniquely specific to having that sulfur-containing amino acid there. It's a specific site of metabolic importance. We'll just kind of leave it at that. So that's pretty cool. But if you have an absorption issue, which is possible, that's why they use like B12 injections with people.
Yeah.
If they have an absorption issue, or if someone's a vegetarian, so they're eating no food sources of B12, so it has to come from animal products, they would inject B12. Normally it's stored in the liver and you have like a year or two worth of storage for them. But that can eventually sort of recede, and you can have people that, because they're deficient in the vitamin, get an injection of B12 and they feel much better.
I had that happen to myself in the past. I could tell a difference, but I was at the time deficient. I needed it. Right.
Yeah, it's pretty dramatic. It's like, oh, wow, the veil lifted. I feel so much better now.
Yeah.
Like what happened with me with vitamin D when I took some.
Yeah, which I had that at another point as well. It was huge, man. But yeah. It gets linked with energy. And so then people start thinking, hey, I'm going to take a B12 shot and I'm going to get this crazy energy from it. And the reality is, yeah, in most cases, you already had enough.
That's where I'm going.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're like, it'll only interrupt you because we're on the same page.
I was just going to say it's not drug-like. It's not like testosterone where now you have 3 times the amount of testosterone that's built up in your system and you're, able to utilize it. From what I understand is you just pee out the rest. It's just gone.
Yeah, that's actually super important that you bring that up. So if you go from a deficiency to a normal level of testosterone, you're going to feel a dramatic difference. Anyone who's been hypothyroid or hypogonadal and they've gone on TRT, they're like, oh shit, wow, this is so much better. And if you're deficient in a vitamin and you get supplemented with that or remedy the deficiency, let's say you have an oral malabsorption problem, and you inject vitamin B12, like, wow, oh my gosh, this is great. Or vitamin D, name the vitamin. I think probably with most vitamins, if you're truly deficient and you but by that time you've noticed it, you can tell it's impacting your lifestyle and how you feel, and you rectify the deficiency, you're good. You're a happy camper. But taking more isn't necessarily going to do what taking more testosterone would, because you can get small, like creatine and L-carnitine are two examples where you can elevate the levels, and you're elevating creatine like, maybe 40% above where a starting point would be. Or if you're a vegetarian, it might be a little bit more than that because you're not getting creatine in your food. Or vegetarians also have a problem with B12. Well, these are all meat sources too, so the vegetarians run this. They've got to really be careful, because they're missing some things in meat that our bodies are sort of engineered to want to have, to make use of. But and with the L-carnitine, that's the thing why people doubted it for so long. It's like, it's basically kind of acting like a vitamin in a sense, because it's a component, at least in terms of fat metabolism, it's a component of an enzyme.
Okay.
Like the vitamins are. So if you're feeding things into metabolism that are requisite parts, it's helpful. So let's say your metabolism is such that you have the equivalent of 10 workers on your construction site, and they can build buildings or outhouses or whatever your metabolism builds. Mr. Olympias, or also Rands in the local show, whatever, they can only build at a certain rate. And bringing them more bricks and more 2x4s and more nails and having more tools is not going to allow them to move any faster than what they need.
Yeah.
So if you give them like, all right, we got a shipment of 500 hammers, guys, you should be kicking ass now. It's like, there's only 10 of us. We only got two hands. Like the other, 480 hammers aren't doing us any good, and having a hammer in each hand isn't of use either. So you just piss it out. Whereas with testosterone, now we've got a dose response curve that's different than what you have with vitamins, where basically replenishing the deficiency supplies things. Now instead of delivering hammers, like now you're bringing methamphetamine to the work site.
Yeah.
And now you've got a pharmacological effect driving those guys to perform more. So now they're like, you don't care about them, we're going to burn them out. Let's just put them on meth, and they're going to work twice as hard, 24 hours a day for the next 6 months, and they're not going to sleep because that's how it works. So that's a drug-like effect. That's different than a dietary supplementation effect.
Yeah. So
what's happening here is, there's some things that come with deficiencies of all those things in parentheses, the B vitamins, carnitine, choline, inositol, methionine. But providing more of those could have some benefit above what you might normally get if you're someone who's deficient or has malabsorption. But it's not going to be a massive effect. But what can be absolutely massive is the placebo effect, of course. So, and it's funny. Like I went and you sent me this just today, and I went and I looked. I looked actually to see if someone had put together like a sort of a scientific critique of injectable vitamins. I still didn't find anything. Just kind of a cursory look through the literature on Google Scholar, just to see like does someone kind of attack this and go after it. But what I did find, just Googling around, I went to regular Google, and I found the ads, so to speak, for clinics that offer these things.
Oh yeah.
And they're like L-carnitine. I was like, what do they say about L-carnitine? Will increase your fat burning, increase your metabolism, increase your energy, increase your performance, increase your strength, increase your endurance. It does everything.
Yeah.
It was like the best supplement of all time. And I'm like, and not a single reference was given. Not a single one. And I'm like, they're just saying this.
Yeah.
As an authority, as doctors. So the expectancy, the placebo effect is really, really powerful when you say something does all that stuff and you're on a website and you're a licensed medical professional. And here's the kicker. So what if I said, Scott, I'm going to give you some creatine. This stuff's got all the scientific literature supporting its use. You don't eat a lot of meat. I know you've been using whey protein, so you're probably a little low. Here you go. Here's the bottle. Just take this. Have 2 grams in the morning, 2 grams at night, and we'll should load you up in the next week. And you're like, okay, well, cool.
Yeah.
And you knew nothing about the literature. Like, okay, wow, sounds pretty good. I believe Scott. What if I said, here's what we're going to do, Scott? I need you to come to my office every day, and we're going to sit you down, prep your vein, put a needle in there, and then give you attention for an hour and talk about your health and talk about your well-being and check in with you while we actually infuse something directly into your veins.
I need to get that. I need that one. That's the one I need, Scott.
That's the one you want, baby. That's the one you want. And they do this in so many studies. It's very, very important. The placebo or the control group is usually an attentional control. So they do this when they look at the there's like an anxiolytic, like it just popped in my head, one of the main studies where you always see this is important. Like look at the psychological benefits of exercise.
Yeah.
And so you bring one group in and let's have one group resistance train, the other group's going to do aerobic training, and the other group, well, we just do nothing, right? Well, no, because there's an attentional effect. Just going in, we're very social animals. When you go into, when you go to a massage therapist or an acupuncturist or a physician or anyone, like women, and I can't blame them, I cut my own hair, which is pretty obvious. People always make fun of my haircut on YouTube. I notice, so please do. I love it. It shows me the level at which you're functioning when you're like, all you can do is comment on my hair. But it's nice to go in and get pampered, right? Like I haven't had a haircut for a while, but if you go get your nails done, like any of those services, it's just, there's an attentional effect. You get the tinglies, right? It's just a nice thing.
I guess it depends what kind of treatment you're getting, but yes.
Yeah, that's true. There's the happy ending massages, that sort of thing. But literally anything where someone is giving you a sort of personalized attention.
Yeah.
Aside from maybe a dentist, depending on what you're having done, or maybe a lawyer, because they're usually just bending you over because it costs so much to see lawyers most of the time. No offense to Rick Collins. I love you, Rick, but, lawyers have a bad rap. They have an attentional control, which is where I'm going. I see a question brewing there.
It was almost intentional. I was like, go with it. Tell me.
Right, yeah. So they have these attentional controls, and they bring people in, and they try to do something with them that accounts for that attentional effect of having made the way in, and they're going, like, if you go all the way in to get run through a training regime with a group of people, and they're examining the beneficial effects of X, Y, or Z, you're expecting that there's going to be a beneficial effect. You're looking for it.
Yeah.
You've got a placebo. So they want to bring you in, and they usually try not to tell them. And so like the attentional control will be, I don't know, they give you something to read, or they spend time with you in some way that is supposed to kind of shift, like account for the fact that you're there with the experimenters interacting with them.
Yeah. Okay.
So you go in for an injectable treatment like this, and you may have no physiological deficiency whatsoever, and there may be nothing really that is, or even let's say there is. But let's say that you are a little bit low on some of these things, and you do have a beneficial effect. And the placebo literature has examined this too. This is what's really cool. This is all kind of flowing. This is, now that I think about this more, I never thought of it this way, but. So you do have a little bit of a positive benefit, and then you remedy that with 1 or 2 injections. You're good to go. You got your B12. Let's say it's B12. You do B12, and now you got enough B12 to run you for a couple months at least.
Yeah.
You're not going to be in a deficient situation that would anyway adversely affect your energy levels or shift your metabolism, but you felt that. So now this shit works. Now you got a full-blown expectancy effect. Mm-hmm. So they've done that, for instance, with the one study that comes to mind is they used and I know you got a question still, so I'm not having
no question.
Oh, okay. But they have you can use like a lidocaine on the skin.
Yeah.
And then so what they did was they intentionally asked people to do pain ratings where they put their arm in an ice bath.
Okay.
And they get and it's very it's very painful actually. Just put your hand in there. It doesn't feel comfortable. You really want to get your arm out of there after a while.
I bet.
Yeah, I mean, they don't let people, become damaged, but that's you're heading towards frostbite, or you feel like you are at least. So then they could numb that with lidocaine. So they put lidocaine on there. So you put your hand in there, and then they kind of tell you what's going on. I think to some degree, this is a numbing thing. So then you're numb, and they get the values. Your perceived pain was went from a 9 down to a 3.
Yeah.
And you're aware of this because you're giving the ratings, and you can feel it. It's very obvious. You compare the first time with the last time, and then they bring you back again. And now they rub some stuff on your arm and they ask you to put your hand down there, and you're like, it's a 3.
Yeah.
But the second time, it was just a placebo cream. There's nothing.
Huh.
But you expect that there's going to be a numbing effect.
Yeah.
Because you perceived it already. So now you go in and you got a little bit of a beneficial, healthful effect that you could perceive the first time from your injectable vitamins, whatever it might be, and you noticed it. And it could just be anything. I mean, it could be just you get a little bit of wooziness that that gives you the sense that something's happening. Like that's what they did in that favorite placebo effect of mine with that Gideon Ariel did with the Diana ball.
Yeah.
They brought the students into the health center, and they said, like, here's all the adverse effects of steroids. So be on the lookout. This shit's powerful.
Yeah.
And it could, so you're like, okay, here it is. So, if you go in, like, let's say you get an IV put in and you get a little bit vasovagal because you don't like having needles stuck in your arm or what have you. And like, whoa, okay. You've just had, you're undergoing a medical treatment.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just had something invasively put inside you. That's a huge deal. So that's different than, like, here's the bottle of this, powder that has no taste. The creatine, you just take it. You don't even really know. You're not going to see anything happen. You're not paying attention to your weight because you got rid of your scale. Let's say. Then it's like compare that with, okay, we're going to give you creatine infusions, and I want you to weigh yourself every day because we're going to start packing on the weight here. We're going to volumize your muscle, baby, and you should probably gain you're probably a pound a day doing this. You're going to start paying attention to those things. All that feeds into this.
So we talked about placebos here for a little while, and I don't even know. Are you telling us that these products don't work?
That's exactly where I was going. So if you're going to go in, the L-carnitine, there's issues there.
Yeah.
The B vitamins, those will work if you have a deficiency. The inositol and choline and methionine, I would go in and ask those medical professionals, it's like, do we have blood work to suggest that I'm deficient in those things?
Reach out to Amino Asylum and ask the medical professionals there. That's what Scott suggests you guys do.
Yeah. Well, it'll probably, they probably have the FDA. This is not for treating medical things, but if they're putting this intravenously into your body, and you're getting this from medical professionals.
Yeah, he's getting it. He said it was from his doctor or Amino Asylum, which is a website.
Yeah,
that we have a code for. Code THINK.
Yeah, they have an injectable there, so they're not going to suggest it.
Not for human consumption, though.
Right. So exactly. But ask the doctor. So how do we know? Are we going to follow my labs? Great question.
Yeah.
It's funny how we don't even want to question the doctors, and some of the times because they just blow you off. But like they're the ones. It's like, so doc, you gave me these drugs. What are we treating? What's your differential diagnosis? And we don't really have one. So we're just masking symptoms. Yes. It's like, okay, thank you for being honest with me. I'm glad you told me that.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of where that would go when you call them on a differential diagnosis. So here, if they're treating something, there should be lab work or some indication that's led them to believe that you have a deficiency. If not, then they're trying to sort of supercharge a metabolism. And the question as to how much and how regularly you'd have to get that done should be reflective on either some literature that shows on average that this is what it takes to like creatine loading. We know this.
Yeah.
We know you're going to hold like 20 to 40 grams of that creatine on average, and you could load with the 20 grams a day for 5 days. That'll get you there. You can load with like 3 or 5 grams a day for a month. That'll get you there. There's numerous ways to fill the tank.
Yeah.
You know that. So if they're trying to fill the tank in terms of each of these ingredients in the infusion, just ask the questions like, so doc, what literature could you have a pamphlet of the literature to show me, what biological effects we're having here? How do we know how often to use of these things?
Yeah.
And there should be, it should be pretty clear. It's like there's a drug. That's why you have the FDA has a drug pamphlet that you can read for any drug that you get prescribed. And, it's funny if you look in the physician's desk reference, the PDR, and look at drugs, like when you look for the mechanism of action, it's most of the time it's unknown. It's not entirely known. There's be a lot of
I've seen that a lot with medications.
It's most of the time, actually, it's sort of like, it binds to
GABA or whatever.
GABA, dopaminergic, serotonergic, binds to every receptor type in the brain, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of like, there was this little thing inside the barn that we wanted to get rid of. So what do? We'll just light the whole fucking barn on fire, and it's gone, right? We don't know how it worked, but there's nothing left.
No barn.
So
no barn.
No barn.
And the thing inside of it is gone. Yeah.
It's gone. So that's how some drugs work. So you've got all sorts of things going on here. So I as far as knowing that the L-carnitine, people do seem to have good effects with that.
Yeah.
And I think some of that is that while that negative effect may be taking hold, the idea would be, and I don't know, this is where I want to kind of, and I'm going to do this and try to, if I can, and finish in the article, figure out how to load the L-carnitine without inhibiting your metabolism.
Yes.
Or minimally inhibiting your metabolism. So get in, get out, get the loading effect, but don't chronically, superfluously, excessively try to elevate carnitine levels throughout the day and thereby suppress metabolic rate when you're not getting any greater loading effect from doing so.
Huh. Yeah.
That's the thing that, that I think is to watch out for. So that's why L-carnitine can work, right? Like just many things can work. If you have a headache, you could take maybe 2 aspirin a day and you're good to go, but you don't need to take 20 aspirin a day and then end up having, a bleeding stomach because you destroyed your gastric lining from the aspirin. So the devil's in the dose, as they say.
Yeah, I was using 400 L-carnitine per day, taking sub-Q, and then I backed it down to 200, and 200 most days, I'll say. 200 like 5 days a week. Right. And I don't seem to see any difference in, using that, but I do feel like it is, like I get a cognitive boost from it. So I'm all for it. But I did go down after we had talked about the potential issues it could cause. Yeah.
It would be interesting to see, not medical advice, but if you could microdose the L-carnitine throughout the day. So like you've got a dose response there. If you've got a subjective cognitive effect.
Yeah.
So 400 grams gives you the same, 200 grams gives you the same as 400 grams. Does 100 grams, or sorry, not grams, milligrams, give you the same? Does 50 give you the same? If your dose response is here, and like, you peak out at like say 25 milligrams, maybe you could do, just whatever, load in an insulin syringe and just do a little bit of a blip of a dose throughout the day, and and that would probably load the L-carnitine. I'd have to look and see how much that would predictably elevate carnitine relative to what you would typically get in meat or food.
Yeah.
But that's probably closer. That may be very much like what it would be to get the L-carnitine from having, a sizable portion of meat in each of your meals. And you may get the cognitive benefits there. And that's the thing, that the relative dose response for creatine loading versus impairing metabolism isn't known. So it may be that, there's a threshold level of, carnitine loading, which is below any substantial metabolic impairment.
Yeah.
And you might be able to simultaneously both at once with the right dose. I don't know. Haven't seen the data. So the other way to do it is to just separate those things. Load and then have a period where there's no loading. And that's kind of what you're doing. You're doing a smaller load, smaller periods, like 1 injection a day, or most days, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder what would happen if you did, let's say you do half the days of a week on average, 200 milligrams. What if you did 100 milligrams every day, but in 4 25 milligram doses?
Yeah.
As an example.
Yeah.
It's a pain in the ass.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't do that, but I understand the idea of it, though.
Yeah.
I have a hard enough time taking it once.
Right. Right. Yeah. But if it really made a big difference in your brain fog, you know.
Yeah.
What's up, Luke?
What's the most anabolic cereal? Cereal Gains Nation. It's still happening.
Yep. I would have to say.
What's he reaching for?
This could be it right here.
What is that? Fruity Dino Bites?
This is the generic Fruity Pebbles.
Ah.
Yeah, I just had this today after my workout, as a matter of fact. This is like super cheap.
Yeah.
Off-brand.
Well, when you're eating that much cereal, you have to figure out the budget. You don't want to go with that fancy name brand stuff every time, I'm sure.
I can't tell any difference.
No,
I think it's the same shit.
It's probably they just put it in a different box. You know, it's got.
Well, there's no box for that. It's like just
a different bag. Yeah, they don't even put that one in the box.
It's like the old school. It's True Nutrition, True Protein stuff.
Yeah.
You're like, why pay for the fancy container where you can just get the food grade bag?
Got some bags right here.
Yeah, right.
Why?
I got some.
Get all the citrulline you want in the bag.
Why pay for the plastic? Yeah.
I'm not sure if this is something that would be up your alley. We had somebody ask. We actually see if we can bump through a couple of them here.
Sure.
Where did you go? There we are. Okay, this one. Okay, there was another one that was like a drug question, but here we go. May I ask you something, Doc? How about limiting the carbs after a HIIT cardio session, such as a few wind gates to promote mitochondrial biogenesis?
Yeah, I mean, there's after actually might have an effect. What seems to have I haven't looked at this for a long while, but that's a cool and a very good question. What seems to have the effect on sort of creating an additional stimulus for mitochondrial biogenesis is limiting carbohydrate in the diet so you don't have glycogen available. So you're on a high-fat diet or a low-carb diet, and you don't have glycogen available. So the body has to rely upon fat for energy as a fuel during endurance exercise or HIIT.
Can you back up for a minute and explain
sure.
mitochondrial biogenesis?
Oh, yeah. Super fancy. Such a fancy term. That just means making more mitochondria, in this case in skeletal muscle.
Okay.
So the mitochondria are the energetic powerhouses of the cell. This is kind of the basic bio of it. That's where aerobic metabolism happens.
Okay.
So a basic adaptation to endurance training, it happens to resistance training, depending on how you train. Some studies show actually dilution of the mitochondria, so the muscle gets bigger and the mitochondrial mass stays the same. That would be like if you're doing just like heavy, like powerlifting would probably do that in most cases. But if you do like a higher rep stuff or like lots of Widowmakers or lots of Widowmakers or pump sets, or if you're really going to town with a higher volume type of training, you're going to get some mitochondrial biogenesis. But to really focus on that, that's your basic endurance exercise adaptation or high intensity interval training. So how much mitochondria you get is a function of duration of training, so the volume you do, as well as intensity. And you can evoke by doing sprints, like 1 minute sprints or high intensity intervals, doing a series of those, like a wind gate, which is a 30-second sprint. You could do a series of those and really, really strongly increase mitochondrial biogenesis. I'll cite the paper, Dudley, 1980. That's the one. Dudley and Turyoung. That was like one of the basic papers that my mentor did way back in the day when he was in grad school, where they looked at intensity and duration in terms of its impact on mitochondrial biogenesis, succinate dehydrogenase, citrate synthase. Classic study with rats. They varied the velocity of training, the duration of training, and both of those impact this. So that's like a basic adaptation. What happens too, and you're kind of like, you're picking hairs here. This is like a strategy that they've looked into for endurance athletes, is if you train with low carbs, and you're running in a low carb situation, your body doesn't have those carbs. You will oxidize the fuel that's available. So the higher the glycogen levels are, the more carbohydrate in your fuel mix. Yeah. If you're eating carbs or you're taking in carbs during your exercise, more carbohydrates will be in your fuel mix. On the contrary, if you're exercising fasted after you've been on a low carbohydrate diet and your glycogen levels are low, you're going to use more fat. The thing with fat is that you can only oxidize fat at a certain rate, which is lower than the rate that you can oxidize carbohydrate. That's just simply the way our enzymes are geared, so to speak. So any given exercise intensity or stress, generally speaking, especially of an endurance nature or an interval nature like this, is going to be more difficult. You can feel it. It's going to be harder. It's going to be relatively more difficult. It's going to be relatively more stressful on the energy systems, the aerobic energy systems in the mitochondria. So being low carb before you exercise, or having no carbs, definitely no carbs coming in, means you're going to shift the fuel use to fats. And you can oxidize, you can break down glucose or carbohydrates with glycolysis. That doesn't happen. Anaerobic glycolysis gives you ATP really fast and doesn't involve the mitochondria. If the glucose, the molecules of glucose are broken down and make their way in the mitochondria, and you get lots more ATP, but at a slower rate, that's aerobic glycolysis. And if you've got like hardly any carbs available and all you have is fat to use, then you're going to be using mitochondrial respiration, oxidative phosphorylation. You're going to be using fat as a fuel. And that means all you've got, you're basically sending the signal, and all you can rely upon is fat as your fuel during exercise. Mm-hmm. That's it. So the mitochondria are put on a premium because you literally you're not running any fuel through the glycolytic chain, enzymatically speaking. So it's kind of like if you've got like a dual fuel car that runs on diesel and gasoline, let's say, and gas is like fat and carbs is like the diesel. If you just force it to run on just gasoline, the adaptation that will happen is mitochondrial biogenesis, all other things being equal, because it's being forced to use only what the mitochondria can use, which is fats. Whereas let's say you had a system that could either use diesel in the mitochondria or elsewhere in the outside the mitochondria as it can in muscle cells. So the thing is, and I don't know, I think I'd have to see if anyone's examined this. I'm sure someone did a thesis on it or something, but if you exercise in a fasted, low carbohydrate state, do an exercise bout, and then look at what happens in terms of turning on mitochondrial biogenesis, like what molecular markers do you set in motion, looking at like the mRNA for those enzymes in the mitochondria. Once you get that wheel turning, you probably stimulated the adaptation. So you could probably take in carbs afterwards.
Okay.
I don't know. It's hard to say. Because if you're taking carbs afterwards, then you've shifted back to carbohydrate. You're going to start oxidizing fuel. So you may dampen the adaptation. But even then, it's such a minimal thing. Like if you really want to get more mitochondria, don't just do 3 intervals, do 8.
So that's where the important message is not going to be
potatoes are.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's going to be the amount of work you do versus the fuel you use to support it.
And the problem is, too, if you're running on no carbs and you can't train as hard, then you're going to lose intensity very likely. It's just simply going to happen during high-intensity interval training. So that's like all that other stuff I said is like so minimal.
I see.
In comparison to the fact that most of what you use on those intervals anyway is going to be, in terms of relative fuel supply, is going to be anaerobic.
Okay.
It's just because they're max efforts on Wingate, you're turning on everything maximally.
Yeah.
So you just get a maximal adaptation. you kind of get you double dip. You get a lot of aerobic glycolysis. You get a lot of aerobic respiration, a lot of mitochondrial biogenesis too, all at the same time. If you eliminate the carbs, then you get more mitochondrial biogenesis, but you can't go nearly as hard without the carbs either. You will bonk hard,
and then
if you try to train that way for too long.
So then what is our benefit then of having created more mitochondria biogenesis?
Oh, then the idea is that carries over. So it's like you don't gas out while you're training in the gym.
And that's where your endurance is coming from.
To some degree. So a lot of it's in the head, in your mind. So you take someone who, like, and they've done this, like Bill Kramer's got kind of like a classic study. They took powerlifters and bodybuilders, where they matched pretty well, pretty close strength wise. Yeah. And they ran the powerlifters through a bodybuilding type workout, and they weren't used to doing that shit. Like, in any powerlifter out there or someone who goes back and forth, they know, like, they were gassing. Everything was elevated. Cortisol levels were higher. Lactate levels were higher. Yeah. They got their ass whooped because they're not used to doing that kind of stuff. So for someone who's trying to put on muscle mass in those situations, this is how I would maybe coach somebody. If someone finds like that for them, progressive overload is absolutely vital, and they gas out really easily. Like every once in a while you have a client that has this, like they just feel like they don't have the respiratory, the lungs to power through like a high rep squat Widowmaker or some of the higher rep sets.
It just turns off.
Yeah, they just, and you're running this a little bit with the COVID, like this is like, that's kind of your limiting factor. You would then want to train that, in a way that as much as possible doesn't interfere with the gains you can make and the strength you can get. So if you I'm going to just get all the mitochondria I can, I'm going to do 15 wind gates 7 days a week. Well, then you'll be whacked. You won't be able to train in the gym.
Yeah.
Because you've gobbled up all your reserve capacity in doing that. But if you're someone who has a desk job and you've never been terribly aerobically inclined, and maybe you got a lot of type 2, it might be worth your while to do, let's say, do your leg training, and intervals are going to be the least likely in the right amount to interfere with growth. So as opposed to doing an hour at lactate threshold as hard as you can is going to probably could potentially have a very powerful interference effect on muscle growth.
Okay.
Whereas doing 3 wind gates, and wind gates are a beast. 30 seconons all out
it's all you have.
It's all you got, man. They'll destroy you. Or a minute is just mind boggling. You're at your wit's end. But if you structure those, put those in after your leg training, let's say, or in a way that doesn't interfere with your training, so that you can recover afterwards, you can get an increased mitochondrial biogenesis, sort of focus in that way, because it's concentric only. That's the thing on a treadmill, on a cycle.
Yeah.
So if you went and let's say just lift as much as you can. That's the way I generally suggest people, is just get in shape to the lifting. But maybe for some people, they don't want to do that. So they do a DC style training where they do 2 heavy sets and then they do a Widowmaker. And it's like that Widowmaker that gets them on the heavier set. They kind of get a little winded. So then what they do on those days, you say, okay, after that, you got plenty of damage. We don't want to do a lot of eccentric contractions. You've done all the lifting you can handle in terms of recovering. But the person doesn't get that sore, generally speaking. Now we're going to throw in concentric only wind gates. Huge energy expenditure, huge effort level. They can go home, eat, relax, et cetera, and now they've got that extra stimulus for mitochondrial biogenesis. Imagine you do that for a mesocycle of training, and you come back 8 weeks later, and you're used to following up those leg days with 2 wind gates, just 2. Let's just say it's 2. That's 1 is enough. 2 is oh shit. If people do those right, they finish them and they're lying on the floor.
Yeah,
they're fucked. They're not doing anything for a minute after that. Then doing a set of 8 to true failure, you can do that shit.
Yeah.
You can handle that. And the Widowmaker, you're I'm going after this. Like it's going to be muscle fatigue, not cardiopulmonary fatigue that's going to end me. And then I'll shift my cardiorespiratory stimulus to doing those wind gates to help maintain and support that aspect. So that's not the limiting factor. So you make the weight training the limiting factor in your growth, in your progress. But limiting the carbs afterwards is going to limit, depending on how you're doing your diet. Like I like to have carbs in or after a workout, especially if you're depending on what you're doing calorically, if you're dieting down or you only have so many carbs you're going to put in, or a number of different things, a whole other tangent, but that's your best time for ensuring that your carbs are going to go to repair and replenishment of glycogen.
Yeah.
Insulin's helpful, all those, there's a potential timing benefit to taking them in then. And the question that Michelle had here was like, well, if we limit the carbs afterwards, can we get even more mitochondrial biogenesis out of the deal? And I'm thinking, like 9 out of 10 of what you're going to get is going to come from how many of those wind gates you do. If you can sort of scale the adaptation into like 100%, 90% of it's going to come from how effortful they are, how hard you can go, and then maybe your diet is going to change that a little bit. But the fact that you're low carbing is going to have probably a greater adverse effect on how hard you can train in general, in a way that's not going to make it worth your while. So you're gonna take one step forward and 2 steps back. A little more mitochondria, but you're low carb, so your performance sucks. So you shot yourself in the foot. Now you might do that. This is what they were trying to do with the high fat diets and endurance exercises. Pretty kind of cool. Is you have people train on the high fat diets and try to evoke more mitochondria that way, and it would make training harder. And then they add carbs back in, and now you've got more mitochondria. Now they got the carbs that they can run on.
Yeah.
So now you sort of evoked an additional challenge running low carb, but the problem that people run into is they just can't train as hard. So their training sucks, and because their training sucks, they detrain.
Yeah. And
then you add the carbs back in, and they're just kind of back to where they were, and now they have to retrain again. So they never really got ahead of the game.
Interesting.
So for some people it probably could work. Depending on, there's always a spectrum of where things could and couldn't work. But, and I'm not sure why she's asking about this in particular, so it's hard to know what it is that she's really wanted to get into. But it's an excellent question.
And it made for some good conversation too.
I think it's a cool topic. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
I have one more, I believe it's like a drug related thing. I don't know if this will be in your wheelhouse. He says,
hopefully it's not methyltrinolone.
Yes. Well, what would you think about high dose nandrolone? Is it right that its conversion to E1 can replace the same function as E2? Does a dose as high as 2 grams per week, maybe combined with EQ? Thoughts, please.
Jordan did that.
What did he do?
High dose nandrolone.
Okay.
He's run a couple cycles like that you can find on his board. And he actually, sex drive was really high.
Yeah.
So this has to do with, and we've talked about this before, about nandrolone and nandrolone being highly androgenic. It's the reduced form that is not. So it's a little bit different than 5-alpha, than DHT and testosterone.
Okay.
This is my guess. This is what was going on here. So dihydronandrolone is really how a lot of it will end up as.
Yeah.
But after it's 5-alpha reduced. But if you take in 2 grams,
you're gonna have a lot that's not reducing. Yeah. Is that what you're thinking? Or?
Yeah, and you'll have nandrolone, which is more androgenic, and that would explain why Jordan and other people who've done it, at least reading on like Professional Muscle, they get high sex drive. So normally,
So yeah, if you're using like 400 milligrams, it's like enough that you can convert that possibly to more DHN versus 2 grams. You're like, fuck, this is too much to convert.
Yeah, the enzyme can't handle that. So
Huh.
that's my guess as to why,
Yeah.
So that's it's called a mass action effect, just generally speaking. So you've got we'll kind of do it for the listeners or the viewers. So we've got nandrolone here that gets converted to dihydronandrolone through the 5-alpha reductase enzyme. So it's going from here to here, and it can only go so fast.
Yeah.
So if you've got huge amounts of dihydronandrolone, or so it would be huge amounts of nandrolone, and you only convert it so fast, you're going to have a relative higher level of nandrolone than 5-hydronandrolone. Whereas if you've got an enzyme that can easily take in whatever nandrolone you're putting in, you get lots of dihydronandrolone, which is lower and it's more anabolic and less androgenic.
Yeah.
So, and you got the dynamics of this.
More Deca. That's the answer.
I mean, it was working, pretty well. I think everyone I've heard who's actually, I can think of 3 people that did that.
Yeah.
But that's all they did.
Okay.
Was that.
So no test, you mean?
Yeah. Wow. I mean, sometimes people try to see. Here's the thing: is like there's this thought, that you have a cycle of 1,000, 1,500 milligrams of total stuff, or 2,000 milligrams of total stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, well, we just want to make sure we can replace. We want to cover our testosterone bases, so we just throw 100 or 200 milligrams of testosterone there as our testosterone base. It's like, well, testosterone, for it to do what it does, is 5-alpha reduced. It's aromatase, so you've got its reduced form, its androgenic actions. You've got its estrogenic actions via being aromatized, and now you're taking in, like, if you put nandrolone in there, it's gonna just totally bump testosterone out of the way at the 5-alpha reductase enzyme. So you're interrupting the flow through of the testosterone in so many ways, depending on all the stuff that you're using there. Plus, you've got things like if it's tren that's binding to the progesterone receptor, which has molecular interactions which tend to cause estrogenic effects, kind of like we were talking about before with the ment. Then you've got so many things going on there. Like you can't really in any way, shape, or form be really sure that you somehow managed to keep those testosterone activities in place.
Right, that makes sense.
You're messing with estrogen conversion, DHT conversion to DHT and estrogen, as well as binding to the progesterone receptor, prolactin production, possibly, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
The second part of this question was EQ, and people run into high problems with. I don't know if you're talking about a high dose of EQ. I'm not sure if that's what he was getting at too, but people get horrible anxiety sometimes, and they get really hematocrit issues.
He said doses as high as, and he said maybe combined with EQ. He was just saying maybe combining it in there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. There's so many ways you can kind of dissect these things out, but if he combines it with EQ, the interesting thing about I'll just give my sort of standard pat answer here for the different steroids is that they have different shapes because they're different compounds, and they will have different binding affinities and activities when they bind to the different androgen receptors.
Which makes sense.
And people have different androgen receptors because they have different genes for the androgen receptor. So there's couple different sequences in the androgen receptor that vary genetically that give rise to an androgen receptor that's shaped differently. So it's the lock and key hypothesis. The lock is the androgen receptor. The key is your androgen, your steroid. And everyone's got a little bit differently shaped lock. And what effect putting those different keys in there will have depends on the person, the lock, which lock you're talking about, the classical genomic one or the one that's on the plasma membrane, or the ones, as well as how that key fits in the lock. So EQ for him, some people love EQ. It's great. They don't get any, psychological activity, which is probably related to that plasma, or sort of the plasma membrane receptor. I think a lot of the psychoactive effects, like the orals that act like immediately, like you take Halo or something like that, and you can feel it in 30 minutes. That's probably acting through those rapidly acting plasma membrane receptors that don't act the way the traditional androgen receptor acts. So that might be what EQ is doing. I don't know that, but those are probably variable too.
Yeah, I always had done okay with EQ, which I tend to be someone who had suffered with anxiety, which you would think like, hey, that guy's prone to anxiety. You take the EQ, it's going to get worse, but I never had that. So it's just whatever, however I'm put together.
How high did you go?
I went pretty high at one point. I ran. I'd gone to a gram of EQ.
That's where people like have all sorts of issues. Sometimes they just
I'm at best cycle at a gram of EQ. Not that I suggest doing it, but I have.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I mean, that's a general thing that you'll see, like with guys, and not that this is the case for you, but when guys have success with gear, is that they can take a lot and they don't have the side effects.
Yeah.
It's kind of like to some degree it comes down to like effectiveness versus side effects. And, like there's like you can look at, like, we can look at binding studies. You can look at various ways of hypothetically trying to examine how much gear would give you the maximal response. And that's why, people are doing like Paul Borison, like cycles and that kind of shit, That's why he, even I think this was part of his theory, if I recall correctly, is like, we're going to just like go for it. We're going to put in like 6,000 milligrams a week or whatever, just crazy amounts. And just because you can turn on all the anabolism with that high amount and get, at least for a short period of time, minimal side effects.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you might find, like, if someone starts off, let's say someone starts off happy and healthy and their liver is robust, and I don't know, let's say they go for a high dose of 2 grams.
Okay.
And they're growing like a weed. And some of that's just because they're growing new and there's like the law of diminishing returns.
Yeah.
But they're growing really well. And then, like, whatever it is they're using starts to slowly have toxicity effects that take hold. So let's say their liver is unhappy. They're going to have less IGF-1. They're going to start sleeping poorly because of trenbolone. That's going to impact their recovery in many, many ways. Their digestion gets a little bit screwy, so there's more stress there that just increases their cortisol levels because they're like, fearing their meals and they're not hungry, and just life is kind of sucking. And for them, continuing that 2,000 milligrams would be, they're going nowhere. So they're just building side effects, and whether or not the androgen receptor is upregulating or downregulating, or there's some other mechanism of desensitization, which I suspect there is. Those 2,000 milligrams, 12 weeks into it, when they're toxed out, are no longer going to be effective, because now the activity, even if it's doing all the same things, and there's no desensitization in terms of the signaling that happens like directly on the muscle cell from the gear the person's taking in. All those other things are going to shift the relative balance of anabolism to catabolism in the wrong direction. So now they're toxed out, unhappy, poor sleeping, bloated, green-faced, green-eyed, jaundiced mess. And they're thinking, what would most guys do? Well, I made good gains. Up the dose.
Yeah.
And that's not the right way to go. It could be, aside from just at that point, get the fuck off and, take care of yourself. But, it could be that a lesser dose is much more useful.
Yeah.
So, people like approaches like Victor Black has, for instance, or the guy that Latz had talked to.
The Russian?
I think he was the Russian guy, who had found out for himself kind of what the max doses are before he has noticeable side effects. Like, it could be that, let's say, whereas you get, an effectiveness of like, 8 out of 10 from 2 grams a week when you have no side effects, but those it only lasts for a week before you start to have toxicity accumulation. It could be that someone could do 400 milligrams and tolerate that really well.
Yeah.
And be the turtle, so to speak,
Yes.
who beats the hare, who burns out, because the hare is, sprinting every 100 meters and then on the side of the road vomiting while the turtle's just like, creeping along.
Yeah.
I'm a happy turtle. I'm just chugging away. And they win the marathon. And they end up being the bigger, healthier, happier of the two.
I didn't realize. So Darren had chimed in and said that Paul Borison had said the Paul Borison cycles were like 1 gram a day for 2 weeks.
That's why I said 6,000 milligrams a week. Yeah, that's 7,000 milligrams a week is a gram a day.
Yeah, I didn't think about it that way until I actually heard him do the breakdown on the day. 1 gram per day. It's nuts, man.
Yeah, I think it was maybe this was Trevor Smith, or maybe they both did this, but I think Borison's idea was you would plan all this out and you would just like, let's say you're going to use test, Deca, and EQ.
Yeah.
A gram of test a day, is that what he's saying?
Yeah. But what you're saying though, yeah.
But he like you would get like a big like 50 mil vial or something like that, and you just like get like all your 10 mil and 20 mil vials or whatever you have, and just put them all into one. Like you prep it all there. So like one giant like jug that's going to be like your weeks. That's going to be your cycle for the next 2 weeks.
I've seen people do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess like a gram. Oh my God! Like that's like. It's like 5 mils a day or something like that.
That's crazy.
Depending on what you're doing.
Man, Darren still has the VHSs of that. Dude, if you can get that onto video, man, or onto digital, I got to see that stuff. That'd be crazy.
Oh, I would love to see it too.
That would be gold, man. Pure gold right there.
Yeah. And, I don't know. I can't. Did he obviously he's passed, but I don't know how he died. That may have been just speculation, but.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a sustainable. For most people, that's not a very sustainable.
No, and it's not what we generally would suggest to do here at Think Big.
No, not at all. But you see, I mean, it's interesting. I mentioned that only because of the idea of trying to get the maximal anabolic effect with avoiding those side effects.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's like a gram a day. Like you about after 2 weeks, you're totally done there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But with all things, it's. The question is, how fast can you grow muscle? Truly grow muscle. How fast can you turn on the protein synthesis? So like this applies to like post-show when people want to have a rebound, and you're eating and you fill up with your glycogen, you fill up with your water, and then if you continue with a 2,000 a day caloric excess, and you literally can only, if you're like I did the numbers on this actually, if you're growing at about a 25 pound a year rate of muscle mass, that breaks down to about a 500 calorie a day caloric excess in order to, if all of it went to muscle.
Right.
So let's say half of it goes to muscle. So you want to make sure you got at least 500 available for muscle. You take in an extra 1,000 calories a day.
Yeah.
That's it's a sizable caloric excess. If you have that awesome rate of muscle growth, 25 pounds in a year is just like outstanding.
And it's going to continually go each month,
if we're presuming that that's the rate, like it's hard to know. There's, it's not going to be a straight line.
Yeah.
But then, then you're going to have, 1,000 calories a day, 500 of muscle, 500 of fat. That's 3,500 about per week to fat. It's a pound of fat every week. But if you go to 2,000, and let's say you don't, and you get that, still you're getting that massive. The 2,000 means you're going to get 3 pounds of fat. Yeah. So you're putting on 4 pounds a week, but 3 of it's fat. Would it make more sense to get a half a pound a week, which is still 12 pounds in a year, and maybe only get two-thirds comes from muscle and 1/3 comes from fat, so you put on a third of a pound of fat.
Hey, I'd take that and not have to get as much off, because who knows how much you're going to lose after you have to diet it down, It'd be a lot.
So there was I'll go real old school. I know probably if Nick Ware's watching this, he'll remember this one. There was Bill Phillips' ABCDE diet. Do you remember that one, Scott?
I don't remember that one, no.
Anabolic burst cycling of diet and exercise.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
Wow. Nice
ABCDE. Yeah. I think he just said we got to make AB like a whole bunch of letters that people can remember.
Yeah, so I could remember those.
Yeah, and I don't remember exactly how. I think think I may have tried it for a week or something. It was such a big deal for a while, and it was literally massive caloric excess.
Yeah.
Just like what the name says, anabolic burst cycling and then you would like go like, go to like a protein sparing modified fast, and then back to like massive caloric excess and back and forth. It was something crazy like that.
Huh.
And no one ever made any progress. It sounded great on paper. It was just awesome.
Yeah.
And it was like such a caloric excess that you were superseding what the maximal rate of muscle growth could possibly be.
Yeah.
You go 300 calories over, in excess, and, maybe it's a 200 calories to muscle, 100 calories to fat. And then you go to 500, now it's 300 to 500, and then you go 1,000, and now it's 500 to 500, and now you go to 1,500, and now it's 900 to 600, and like 2,000, and now, so your relative P ratio, so to speak, gets worse and worse and worse. So once you go to 7,000 calories a day or whatever like that, then you're ensuring that like 85% of those extra calories go to body fat.
Yeah.
You just can't take that off. Like if you have a 5,000 calorie a day caloric excess for 2 days in a row, and you have to eat like nothing for the next 2 days and do exercise in order to negate that, you'll never come back.
Some of the things I've seen, like some of the diets I've seen, some of the gear protocols I've seen on the message boards back in the day, they were, I think, better sales pitches than in anything else. Like, I want to get behind this because this sounds cool and this sounds like it'll give me what I want, when in reality it was not maybe the case.
Yeah. I mean, that's like it, like the Paul Borison stuff is, I mean, it's exciting, right? It's like, it fits the mindset.
Yeah.
You go in the gym and you're like, motherfucker, gravity's my bitch. It's going down. Give me the big weight. You're aggressive.
Yeah.
You get after it. Like that's how you make gains. You have to have that mentality, tackle the shit, and you're an unstoppable force of nature. Right. So like when that is a mentality that, works and needs to be applied in the correct measure, meaning at the right times, that's very appealing to someone to say, okay, here we go. Gram a day, baby.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Pile it all in. So it's, and there's going to be, some placebo effect there too.
But then we get fat and we learn.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing, too, is you're going to do everything else right. Like when you're all in, like when you've gone all in, or like you push all your chips to the middle, you're like, I'm going to make sure I'm doing everything perfect. Like your whole life. Like, I mean, I'm trying to imagine. I mean, for most, I'm thinking if someone did like a random survey of bodybuilders following the Paul Borison style of training, like how many of them, and this isn't a knock on going all in on bodybuilding,
of course not,
especially now in the day and age where we're seeing some a lot of people passing, and like people are thinking like, what the hell am I doing here? Like, have I been taking unnecessary risks? Blah blah blah. But if you think about, if you did a survey of the Paul, like how many of those are also, the family man, who's like got a very balanced family, and like, like, oh, okay, honey, like, I'll be right back. Keep the dinner on. I got to go load up these fucking syringes.
Yeah, it's going to be a certain mindset for sure, a certain person.
Exactly. It's a single-minded thinking. You kind of have to do that, Yeah. If you're going to be that way, because it's all in. So that's going to mean if you adopted that you're also doing everything else. And it could be that, maybe there's something about, having 7 grams a week or whatever that's going to produce some gains for sure.
Yeah.
But having all those other pieces in place could be half of what is really actually working.
Yeah. All right.
Doing something like that.
Well, listen, let's wrap this thing up. We've gone long here. Great stuff as always. Guys, check out Be Your Own Bodybuilding Coach, BYOBBcoach.com, or you can go to Amazon. Check out Scott's book over there. Of course, go to our great sponsors, TrueNutrition.com. Use our code THINK, and check out supplementsource.ca. And thank you for our questions today that came from Patreon. You guys are awesome, helping to support our programming. I appreciate it much. I thought you were grabbing the book. I thought you were grabbing for the book. You guys know the book. Scott, I appreciate you as always, man. We'll see you guys soon.
Thanks, brother.